They say history remembers the brave, but what if history only remembers what it's allowed to see? You know the story, or you think you do. 300 Spartans standing shoulder to shoulder against the endless tide of Persia. A past so narrow it was said a single spear could hold it. A king who would rather die than kneel. It's a story carved into the bones of Western civilization. But behind every legend lies the echo of another truth, one buried, one whispered, one written in ink and sealed with betrayal. Because Thermopylae was never just a battle. It was a performance, a war of perception, of fear, and of secrets. And behind the roar of the Spartans and the thunder of Persian drums, there was another sound, the faint scratching of quills across parchment. Letters that carried more power than legions. Long before Leonidas stood at the hot gates, Persia had already begun its conquest not with swords, but with silence. From Sardis to Susa, riders moved at night carrying sealed orders, intelligence reports, coded instructions. They were the lifeblood of an empire that understood something Greece had yet to learn, that empires are not built on conquest alone, but on information. Xerxes, son of Darius, heir to the largest empire the world had ever known, ruled with the mind of a tactician and the patience of a spider. He believed that every man, no matter how loyal, could be undone by the right whisper. And so, while his generals sharpened their blades, his scribes sharpened their words. Hidden deep within Persian archives discovered near Persepolis fragments of charred papyrus. Preserved in clay and ash, modern historians found traces of something remarkable, a sequence of coded correspondences sent between Persian field officers and agents embedded within Greece itself. They spoke of envoys, bribes, and secret routes, but among those half-burned lines, one name appeared repeatedly, Ephialtes. To the Greeks, he would become a curse, the man who sold out his homeland, the traitor who showed the Persians the hidden mountain path that doomed the Spartans. But what if his story wasn't as simple as treachery for gold? What if Ephialtes wasn't a villain, but a pawn? The first of these letters, decoded after years of analysis, reads, "The man of Trachis wavers. He speaks of exile and dishonor. He fears his people more than our blades. Promise him dignity, and he will yield the mountain." At first, scholars thought it was a fabrication of forgery planted centuries later to stain Greek pride. But the handwriting, the seal, the cipher all matched authenticated Persian military documents. These were real communications between Xerxes' command and his intelligence network. And within them, a chilling strategy unfolded. Ephialtes wasn't approached as a mercenary. He was studied, profiled, and cultivated. Persian scouts had been watching him for months, a man rejected by his peers, humiliated by the laws of Sparta that celebrated bloodlines over merit. He wanted glory but was denied it. He wanted belonging but was shunned. To Persia, that kind of man was not an enemy, he was an opportunity. They didn't offer him gold at first. They offered him something rarer, recognition. One letter said, "He wishes to be remembered. Promise him that. Make his name eternal." And they did. In the dark days before the battle, as Leonidas marched to Thermopylae, Persian envoys moved silently through Thessaly and Phocis, disguised as traders and pilgrims. They met with intermediaries, exchanging sealed scrolls under the veil of night. Every word was coded, every name concealed. Ephialtes' identity was never written directly, only referred to as the mountain's voice. When the armies finally met, the Spartans believed they had the terrain. The hot gates, a narrow choke point between mountain and sea, was their fortress. A handful of men could hold thousands there. For 2 days, the Persians bled against the wall of shields and the unyielding roar of Spartan discipline. But far beyond the clashing of armies, Persian scouts were already moving along the mountain ridge. Ephialtes had shown them the Anapia path, not because he was bribed with treasure, but because he was convinced that his choice would bring balance to a world dominated by arrogance. To him, the Spartans were not heroes, they were oppressors. And in that conviction, the Persians found their victory. One letter, found half destroyed. There's the line, "The path is open, the guardians sleep. The gods have blessed our hand." At dawn, the Persians struck from behind. The Spartans, surrounded, fought to the last. The battle was lost. The legend was born. And Ephialtes, the man who believed he was shaping history, became its eternal villain. But the story doesn't end at the mountain. because among the Persian letters, one final message stands out. It was sent weeks after Thermopylae, from a commander near the Gulf of Artemisium to Xerxes himself. It reads, "The traitor flees. His usefulness ends. Silence follows him like shadow. No one knows what happened to him afterward." Some say he was killed by Greek hunters seeking vengeance. Others claim he was executed by Persia to erase a liability. One rumor says he vanished into the east, living under a different name, haunted by the very silence he helped create. But beyond the man, beyond the betrayal, the letters reveal something far more unsettling. Thermopylae was not the exception, it was part of a pattern. Persia's intelligence network spanned across the Aegean, infiltrating city-states, manipulating rivalries, spreading disinformation. They understood that the Greeks could not be conquered by strength alone, they had to be divided. And perhaps the greatest irony of all is that the Greeks learned. Decades later, at Salamis, Themistocles would use deception, the same tactics the Persians perfected to feed false intelligence back to Xerxes, luring his navy into a trap that would destroy it. The masters of espionage were undone by their own methods, the spider caught in its own web. So maybe Thermopylae wasn't a tragedy, maybe it was a lesson. A brutal, necessary revelation that even the strongest walls can fall when trust collapses within. And in that moment, the age of heroic warfare began to die. The age of information had begun. The Spartan spears may have shattered, but their story survived because it was simpler, cleaner. A tale of courage is easier to believe than a tale of corruption. But the truth doesn't care for beauty. It hides in the margins. Between the letters, in the cracks of the scrolls the victors chose to burn. And so, when you hear of glory and honor, remember Ephialtes, the man who wanted to be remembered, and got his wish in the cruelest way possible. Because sometimes, the most dangerous weapons are not forged from steel, but written in silence. If one man's secret could turn the course of an empire, imagine what truths still lie buried today, sealed behind the comfort of legend. History is not what happened, it's what survived. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we started reading between the lines. If this story made you question what you thought you knew about Thermopylae, share it. Let others see that history isn't just about heroes and villains, it's about the choices made in the dark that shape the world we live in. Because as long as truth remains buried, betrayal will always find a way to repeat itself.